SpotOn webinar we're really excited about. We have Miss Christiana Jones. So she is president of My Franchise USA, and she will be co-presenting with Miss Rebecca Monet, our chief scientist here at Zoracle. Cris has extensive experience working with E2 candidates. So if you guys have any questions about that, she'd be happy to kind of help you along the way with that as well. So we are going to be talking about two of her actual candidates and how she used their SpotOn results to select and present franchise concepts for them based on what their profile said. So one person ended up buying a franchise, one person didn't, and we're going to talk about how and why that all worked out. But throughout the session, feel free to answer or ask any questions that you have. If you can answer some, go ahead and do that too. We love engagement. Shoot me a message directly or open it up to the room. But at the end of the session, we'll have a Q&A period. So raise your hand, get involved. We want to hear your feedback. So without any further delay, we will have Miss Rebecca Monet take over.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Aubrey said, we these last few webinars, the attendance has just been out the roof. So we're so excited to see both brokers and franchisors with this commitment to truly understand what makes certain folks good candidates in certain systems and what, of course, are not good fits. So it's good to see both Azores and brokers here today. So I'm going to do a quick overview, and then we're going to jump right into two case studies that Cris has volunteered to share with us. An overview. When we are looking at the SpotOn profile results, the first thing we always want to consider is compatibility markers. If a prospective franchisee is compatible, they're going to ramp up better, they're going to validate better, they're going to be more satisfied, they're going to retain longer. So you're going to be looking at three primary markers as it relates to compatibility, and you'll see how Cris used these compatibility markers to begin to consider the different concepts in her inventory to share what she believed was a good fit. So we're going to be looking at the candidate's values and how that aligns with the franchisor. You want to look at the franchisor's stage of growth, where they are in that evolution. We know that a franchise system that's further along, more plug and play, needs a different franchisee than an emerging franchisor or even a brand new franchisor. So we're going to look at the candidate's stage of growth and then also compare that to our inventory to see where there's a good fit for this prospective franchisee. And the third piece that we're going to look at in terms of compatibility markers, of course, is culture. What's the culture of that franchise organization, and what culture will this prospective franchisee fit best in, feel most comfortable in? Once we have an idea of the compatibility, then we want to dig into the competencies. So we know they're compatible, but do they have the stuff it takes to be successful? And we see again and again, oftentimes, both franchisors and brokers focusing only on the competencies and leveraging those. I want you to focus on the competencies and focus on complementary competencies, where the Z is bringing something to the table and then the ZOR complements that, and vice versa. So as it relates to competencies, I want you to look at those top 3 or 4 competencies and find a concept that will leverage those competencies in that prospective franchisee. But you're also going to be looking for a concept that augments or compensates for those areas where your prospective franchisee is a little bit weak. We want them to be successful, right? We also want to look at their sales style because every business requires a certain level of sales, and every franchise concept requires their franchisee or someone they hire to be able to sell. And one sale is different than another sale. High ticket versus low ticket, consumer based versus business to business, consultative versus competitive. So we're going to look at some of that. And then I want you to also look at the needs and wants. Your prospective franchisee, based on his profile, will express certain needs and wants that he expects or needs to feel a good fit within a franchise system. So again, Cris and I will go through that. So bottom line, we're focusing on compatibility combined with competencies because we want these franchisees to ramp up well. We want them to be happy and validate well. We want them to retain. We want our franchisors to not have litigation issues or compliance issues with them. And of course, we want to help our franchisors so they don't have the cost of training and supporting the lower performers. We want solid performers in there. And we know when they have the competencies and the compatibilities, they're going to perform better. So focus always is step one is on compatibility, and then we're going to take a look at core competencies. So Cris, I am so glad you are here, and I know you are swamped, and taking an hour every day is huge. So thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you very much, Rebecca.
So, Cris, you have two candidates that we're going to review. The first one is Jacques, right? That's who we're going to look at first? So Jacques where's he from? He's an E2 client. Where's he from?
He's an E2 client. He's from France, and he just sold his gift shop in French Polynesia.
And so I'm sorry.
And he wants to come to the United States, and he likes Southern California.
Okay, so he wanted to find something he could do in Southern California. Who wouldn't? I'm in Southern California, so I think it's a great place for him. So he sold his business. He's ready to start another business. He's ready to come to the U.S., and you are helping him through that process. So let me review real quickly his summary of his assessment. Jacques is an achiever, connector who belongs in a culture that we call a control culture. It's stable, it's unifying, and he needed to be in a franchise organization that we call a stage 2 or a partnership, interdependent kind of relationship, or a stage 3. So we don't want to put him in something that's too new, too dynamic, but something that has probably at least 30 to 40 units where there's lots of room to grow. So as an achiever, he is someone who is naturally driven towards goals, and he's going to want to control, and he's going to want to dominate. He's wants to get results. He wants to obviously put numbers on the board, and he's going to be looking for a system that is high quality, a product or service that's also high quality. So as an achiever, this is an individual that's focused specifically on growing something, but growing it in such a way that he doesn't have to reinvent the wheel, but that he can have total control and get the results he wants. Cris, what are your thoughts about this achiever side? When did you first notice it sort of pop out in your conversations, or how did it show itself?
Well, actually, there was a kind of a sense of urgency to get things done, because obviously he was in France, and he wants to move forward with his life. So, and then he says, "I'm available. I need to get this done." So this is when it came up in the early stages.
So that doesn't surprise me, Cris. Actually, achievers literally are going 90 miles an hour. They're fast thinking, fast moving. Once they have the data, they're able to make quick decisions. They usually respect and appreciate advisors, which doesn't surprise me. He came directly to you to get some support and unbiased opinions about things. So achievers are some of the best as it relates to reaching out to the experts out there in the field to get advisement. And once they have the advice, boom, they tend to move through. So it looks like that showed up pretty quickly.
Yeah. So I was on a mission to get this done well and quickly.
I don't blame you. Excellent.
Time with him to making sure it would move forward and all the things got together. Yeah, it was efficient and structured.
Yeah, and that's a good point because achievers do anticipate that and expect that. If you don't have a process as a broker or even as a franchise or a system of keeping them fully engaged, doing homework, doing research, whatever that next step is, there's going to be some friction between the two of you. So in this case, Cris, you kept him paced well. You understood that he needed that kind of a pace. Can you talk a little bit about the stages of growth? Now, in this case, Jacques needed something where he would be in this almost partnership relationship where there was a strong franchise system, not too small, not too big. There was still lots of room for growth, but there was some interdependency, a partnership kind of feel between the ZOR and the Z, as well as between your candidate and, of course, his the folks that will end up being his clients out there in his local marketplace that he purchased. So as a stage 2, he was looking for that, but he's also a guy that is smart enough, wise enough, has a talent to put systems and processes in place. So he's a guy that will grow. He's a long-term player. What franchisor wouldn't want that, right? He's a long-term player. He's going to grow with that franchise system all the way through stage 3, which can be an organization as large as 1,000 units. So he's a long-term player. So when you were considering, Cris, showing him franchise concepts, when you were going through some of these stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, stage 5 companies, what were your thoughts when you were sort of narrowing down the focus? And maybe you can share with us which concepts you first considered and then decided they may not be in the right stage of growth, or they were, and you decided to show it to them.
It was not so much about the stages of growth because everything I showed him was stage partnership or plug and play. So I did not show him, I really followed that to the letter. Whatever I showed him was stage 2 of stage 3.
Perfect. So you just naturally excluded 1 and 4 and 5 and went straight for 2 and 3 and didn't even bother considering showing that. You only showed him 2 and 3. Smart. I think it's smart. So we want to show him achiever businesses, things that have high quality, that are unique, that allow him to dominate and control, that are stage 2 or stage 3 franchise organizations. So in terms of culture, and maybe you can address some of this from another perspective, Cris, because he's coming from France, he's coming to the US, he's going to be coming into a franchise culture, and in this case, he fits best within a franchise culture that we call a control culture. So this is going to be a franchisor who knows how to create a sense of unity both at the corporate level plus also with its franchisees, but it is also focusing on controlling the efficiencies and the effectivenesses of the deliverables for the franchisee, what that franchisee needs to deliver to the franchise, their marketplace, they're going to control. So a control culture is one that's really good at managing processes and resources. And as an achiever with a culture of control, this is something that your candidate is likely to look for. Did that in any way, Cris, I want you to speak to that. Did that in any way and take those stage 2 and 3 companies and narrow down your options at all and who you were going to share? And if so, can you share how that might have worked?
Actually, it's funny because I showed him 3 concepts, and he naturally gravitated to the culture, to the control culture himself.
Now,
he picked the one who had the control culture.
Which would make total sense. See that because, and it's so funny you say that because candidates know it's like a gut feel, and they know when it's a fit or not, but they can't articulate it. Our job as brokers and franchisors is to help them articulate why this fit and why this didn't. And in this case, because you were so good at the original selection of 3, there was, you know, a 90% fit, and then there was just this one piece in the culture that didn't fit. So he's going to gravitate towards the control. So this tool is just designed to help you select those concepts and get as close to fit as possible. But you're also from Europe, and in this case, Jacques coming from France. Do you think this is a cultural thing, that he's looking for a franchise concept that is more stable, has more unity, is more control oriented, more efficient, more effective? Is that a cultural thing from him, or is it for folks from France, or is this just him?
Well, I would say that nowadays I probably do 95% are all E2 candidates. I don't do very few US candidates at this point. And most of my clients are achievers. I would say, again, 90% are achievers. I have very few, especially for France, there are emulators, but most of them are achievers. So control comes very often, that's true, as well as collaborate.
Interesting. Interesting. You know, having been raised in Switzerland myself, where it is about unity and it is about stability and it is about efficiencies and effectiveness, I just didn't know if this was a European feel that we were seeing with this control culture, where your E2 candidates from Europe prefer a control culture, or if it's just that you find many of your E2 candidates are just, you know, more achiever-like than what we might see here in the U.S. And it sounds like it's leaning towards the latter, that many of your E2 candidates are just very achiever-like.
Yes, and interestingly enough, all my Hispanic candidates that I had so far are all achiever directors, all of them.
Get her done.
They're all achiever directors.
How fun. That's interesting. All right, so let's talk about work style. So even though Jacques has this get her done, achiever side, all about control, all about dominating, all about numbers on the board, all about quality, he also has this other side, this connector side that's conscientious and has excellent follow through and is a good team builder and all of those things. How did this piece play in your relationship with him and your communications with him? Because this is a big piece of the communication, or even how he may have related with franchisors.
Well, he's a very personable individual. He's very pleasant. He's very polite, very pleasant. So, you know, it's a pleasure to work with him. He's not impatient. He's patient. He's, you know, he's focused. I would say that, you know, any franchisor that would be pushy or rude wouldn't work with him.
Yeah, and I think that's typical of connectors. It's important to connect with them, to relate with them, and if we, as brokers or as Azores, don't take the time to build a relationship, it can feel a little pushy. And in this case, Cris, I know you well enough that never in a million years would you do that, and most of our Azores would not either, unless it was accidental. But I just wanted to point that out, that this piece, this work style piece, also has much to do with how you connect with someone. In this case, Jacques, although a barracuda in terms of a business guy, also appreciates, and his priority is indeed relationship. So we have to take our time to build that relationship. And Cris, you did a beautiful job of that. Like you said, he's pleasant, he was amiable, he was truly going through the process as you had lined it out. So we were looking for businesses that were stage 2. You found him 3. They were achiever businesses. You found him the same stage, the same 3. And then you looked at his work style and his culture. And naturally, he leaned a couple of directions towards more the control culture. And then you also looked at his competencies. Can you address any of this and how you use this in the selection and or presenting of concepts?
Yes, so his strength is really executive and management. So he likes having employees. And then because he has already the experience in retail and he's a connector, I thought that the retail concept would be a good fit. Now, because he has been in the islands for so long, I wanted something that would, how you say, preserve his lifestyle or his quality of life. Something that would be pleasant to other people, that would be, how you say, almost like selling a dream or selling something of value to the people. So, and because he's an achiever, I was thinking about, okay, I need to see something which is more a service in retail. That was my train of thought. So he needs employees. I think he's gonna want to have skilled employees if he has. And that was my thought.
I like it. So you leaned towards something where he was managing people, that was service oriented, and likely something retail, because he had these customer service skills, admin skills, management skills, and also the finance skills and the operational skills. So he didn't need to be in a food concept per se. He could indeed go into a service concept. That was an option, and definitely a really good fit. Excellent choice. So let's talk a little bit about his sales style. He's a consultative sales guy. He's good at helping others achieve their objectives. He has a way to get to a solution, truly understand his clients and move them to. He's not a competitive sales guy, so he's not going to be a door knocker. He's not going to be a phone caller. He may not even be a major, networker, although he could do that. But he's more of a consultative sales guy. Tell us a little bit more about that and how that related to the concepts you then chose, and what your thoughts are on that just overall.
Yes, I look at concepts where either his sales skill would not be that important, where the marketing and or the need of the product would be so compelling that he wouldn't have to advertise or do sales per se. So I look at concepts that would provide that for him, or concepts where he would be more in hey, I can help you with the problem that you have. So him being more like a problem solver.
Yeah, and he's an excellent problem solver. And to go back to a point you just made, even though he scored a 5 out of 10 in marketing, it really is not his true core competencies. His competencies is more around the managing and growing of the business. So I like that you took that into consideration, that he doesn't really have the strong marketing and sales skills, but he really is a good manager, a good ops guy, so I need to find him probably a retail business that is service oriented, where he's managing smart people, basically. And solving problems in some way. He also scored in this area, Cris, as a single unit operator and a multi-unit operator. So this is someone that's going to comply well. He's going to embrace systems. He appreciates what the franchisor brings to the table, and he's literally going to not reinvent the wheel and go out and do it. Were there any conversations between the two of you about the thought of a second or third unit, or how did those conversations go?
Yes, he was interested in multi-unit, but in terms of budget, we had a limitation.
Okay, so and that obviously played a role in what you selected. So here's someone that has the potential of being a multi-unit operator, but a limited budget. So even more reason to find him a stage 2 business, because in a stage 2, he may not have the dollars now, but that franchisor will likely still have some good market in a year or two where he can grow to that second or third unit if he chooses to. So we want to make sure that we also think about his future, that either he can so dominate a market as an achiever as a single unit, or that this franchisor has some space available where we can spread our wings a little bit. And in many cases, the franchisee will attempt to have those conversations with the franchisor to have maybe a first right of refusal or something like that. But this guy has the potential, just didn't have the dollars at that particular time. So you've addressed this piece to some degree already, Cris, but I wanted to pull a few more pieces out. These are the needs and wants of what Jacques would normally want in a business. And you know, we already mentioned kind of the control. We already kind of mentioned that he's a strong manager, and those kinds of things, and that he's not as concerned about sexy and all of that. So a service-based business would be okay. As you're looking at this kind of list, Cris, and the needs and wants that either you picked up from this assessment or that he in turn shared with you, can you tell us more about that so we can incorporate it in our learning experience?
Yes. Actually, I think I used this really in the selection of the businesses more than anything else. I kind of incorporated the other things, but then I remember when I was preparing the presentation, I was looking at this page, and I says, okay, I have my list. Now let's cross-check and making sure that the concepts I have respond to this, and how much do they respond to this? How much are they a good fit?
I love how you did that. And I would encourage those of you brokers that aren't doing that, get a spreadsheet. Put your franchisee down. You know, this is his values, this is his culture, this is his stage of growth, and then mark down these needs. Take it straight from this page, but also listen to him or her, because they may have additional things that we weren't able to pick up in the assessment, or that they want to articulate a little bit differently. Make a spreadsheet of those needs and wants, and then take your 3 companies and do a side-by-side comparison and say check, check, check. And this will help you determine the concepts, just like it did for Cris. So this page you rely on quite a bit then, Cris.
Yes.
Excellent. That's good feedback. All right. Are you comfortable moving to to Nyla, our next candidate?
We haven't said what he picked.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Good thing. Yes, please tell us what you showed and what he ultimately
All right.
picked.
So I showed him Spice and Tea Exchange, Flip Flop Shop, and this is more because I think I was under the impression that coming from the islands, he would like flip-flop shop. Actually, I was looking for initially a surf shop for him, but I couldn't find anything that was decent. And then Seva, and he ended up picking Seva. And then what happened was, that was in May, and there were lots of delays with the registration for California, and we ended up, and it was taking forever, so we just ended up looking at something else, and he ended up buying 9 rounds.
Excellent. Excellent. So Seva was a good fit for him, but as an achiever, he was ready to make decisions quickly and get things gone. And we just didn't have all the ducks in a row and the territory that he wanted, so he moved on to another concept. This is obviously just something that happens occasionally. Unfortunately, you had 9 rounds, which is an excellent concept and a perfect a perfect fit, likely a solid stage 2 moving to stage 3 organization, button down systems and processes, one where he can continue to grow and has that culture of control and achiever likeness. So, and at the same time, bringing in that connector side of him where he's building relationships and managing people and helping people at the same time. Excellent job. Thank you. So let's talk about Nyla. Tell us just a little bit about her, and then I'll jump into her assessment.
Yes. So Nyla is a very wealthy person, and she's in the United States with her husband. Her husband is a high-level executive. And they called me because they said, oh, we would like to get our son here in the US, and he needs to do an E2 visa. So we would like to prospect for him and help him find a business. And the way she described her son was an achiever, the way she described it to me. So her son is an executive. He's a successful engineer. His wife is a lawyer. I mean, they have really good background, and says and he likes to get stuff done, and so I want a business that it's profitable for him. This is what she told me, and I have about $150,000. But if you need to put more, if it's a good business, that's not a problem. We have money. That's what she told me.
Okay. Perfect. So that was your initial back and forth conversation with her. And when somebody has endless money, we have some endless choices available to her. So here's a mother wanting to invest in a business for her son. But this is her assessment that we have, but we have a pretty good idea who the son is at the same time. He's likely an achiever director, the way you've described him. So we have a mother who is a emulator director, and she is looking for something that has a compete culture and is a stage 1, stage 2, or stage 3 business. She's got incredible sales skills, leadership skills, etc. But let's dig a little bit more deeply here. So we know that every single decision is based on someone's values. And the tool pulls out the top 7 values for you. And so you can then align a franchise concept with those values. The closer those values come into alignment, the more attracted and almost compelled that prospect is going to be to move towards that direction. So our values are actually part of our attraction strategy from a neurological perspective. So we have mom, who is an emulator. And emulators, as we know, are folks that tend to have a lot of confidence. They're usually very smart individual, but they're about things like prestige, sex appeal, innovation, things that are adventurous and fun. So an emulator loves a good challenge, and an emulator loves to compete. They need a lot of autonomy, a lot of flexibility. They like doing things their own way, not your way. And so we're looking at a woman who is interested in things that are going to cause a certain level of prestige. This isn't just about income. This is about a certain view that she would want this business to have that reflects back on her. So talk to me a little bit, Cris, with this. You're dealing with an emulator, which are high energy, fast moving individuals who seem to have limitless potential and possibility, but there's also some challenges with them, correct?
Yes. I'm laughing because unfortunately she's not my only emulator. I had 3 emulator directors, and I'm still working with 2 of them, and it's probably the most difficult situations I ever had because they are irrational. might like something that you're showing a true business, and it's solid, it has potential, it has earnings, but they say, oh, it's not pink, and you're like, what are you talking about? But that's, pink has to do anything with this? Yes, but pink is my favorite color. So this is what I'm facing with this type of clients. And she was my first emulator director, so I did not understand. So definitely, for me, it's the most challenging profile that I had to deal with in the past 18 months.
Yeah, an emulator director is really good at leveraging other people's talents, other people's knowledge, other people's money. And you're right. There's a feeling of puff up, that it's never enough. The expectations are very, very high, and there's always one more thing they want to critique. The other challenge that emulators have, this doesn't mean they don't make good franchisees, because they can in the right system. Trust me, especially early franchise systems. They're wonderful salespeople. They're super personal. They're hardworking. So in the right system, they're good. But working with them, there is a little bit of having to harness them or corral them. One of the other challenges that an emulator has is that they are what we call an optional buyer. So you end up having to show them like 20,000 different concepts. They're not like the achiever that you just dealt with Jacques, where you can show them 3 concepts and boom, 2 are perfect. He wants both, right? An emulator wants to see a gazillion, and then their criteria for deciding what business they want is constantly changing. I want pink. I want a bigger floor plan. I want this. And it literally can change from day to day, which is why, corralling them and getting more specificity in terms of the criteria and checklist is somewhat helpful. But the issue was bigger than that from the sounds of it here. So we got an emulator who's about sex appeal, about image, about innovation. She wants lots of independence, lots of flexibility, who tells us she's buying a business for her son, but doesn't even include the son in those conversations. So let's look for just a second. Again, she is actually an emulator with a secondary achiever. So she's got this emulator and then this driver behind her with this achiever side and this director side. So naturally, if we were to find a business for her, it's likely going to be a different business than it is for the son. But she's telling us it's for her son. So let's talk about stages of growth. She was a stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. Most achievers, like the son, would likely also fit well, at least in a stage 1, a stage 2, or stage 3. They also sometimes fit well in a stage 5 business. When you were selecting businesses, did you just gravitate to 1, 2, and 3 franchise organizations, or how did that play into your decision-making process?
I was looking more into 2 and 3, to be honest, because remember, it's for the son. Because the mistake I made was I was listening to what she was saying. She was saying to me, I need a business for my son. So being an E2, I thought, okay, I need a concept that has some history, because it's going to be easier to get the visa approved, because it's a known brand. Because can show, if it's too entrepreneurial, it's going to be a problem for the E2. So I gravitated from businesses stage 2 and stage 3 because of that.
Excellent. Excellent. And that's a really, really good point, Cris, is so from a practical standpoint, from an E2 perspective, we're going to be looking for late stage 2 or stage 3 so we can get them through the process. Never mind, the son as an achiever would fit better in there. And at the same time, typically emulators, especially emulator directors, are interested in sexy, new, trendy, innovative, and oftentimes concepts that are somewhat new. So there's this push and pull. You're doing what's right you're doing what's right for all the right reasons, but she's an emulator, and that's going to start to grate here. So I'm going to flip through a couple of these just for time because we're already starting to get some questions. I want to make sure people put their questions into the text chat for Cris and or for myself. So we already addressed this director side. She's a take charge, take control type of individual, and under stress could become critical and dictatorial. You ran into that a couple of different times. This is normal. All directors do it. It's not a bad thing. It just means they like to get things done. But it's also, as a broker or as a franchisor, something we have to be aware of, that this is just means they're under stress. It doesn't, we don't take it personally in any way. It's just the role they go into when they're under a certain degree of stress. I'm going to go to core competencies in this particular case, and then ask you to tell us what you showed, what happened, what you would have done a little bit differently. So in this case, our candidate, Nyla, super incredible sales skills. This woman could sell ice to Eskimos if she would need to. She's got very strong leadership skills and very strong technical skills. But the big thing here is this sales piece. I also wanted to point out one more thing, and Cris, you and I, when we talked about this, thought, kind of giggled about it. But you notice that she scores like an Oprah Winfrey. And Oprah has been a very successful business person, but you notice everything she builds is around her, right? It's her name, her brand, her face on everything. And this young lady, Miss Nyla, scored similar in that it's about creating a unique brand, and usually that unique brand needs to be something around themselves. So it has to be something, even if she's going to go in franchising at all, it has to be something where it's all about her. Anything you want to add to that, Cris? I probably took your thunder away there.
Absolutely that, because later in the game we had the conversation with the husband, and she was completely occupying the space, the whole discussion. It was all about her. It was not about her husband, not about her son. It was about her.
And that's okay if we find her the right business that allows that, where she can be the star. She can be the one that's noticed in her marketplace. There are a lot of great franchise concepts that will allow that, but many that won't, that there's a more solid. So, and then the final page, and then I want you to tell us what you showed and what you would have done different. She scores as a true entrepreneur. She's likely someone who thinks she can do it on her own, and honestly probably can. She has what it takes to start a business, and never mind, she also has the dollars to do so. She scores in an entrepreneur. So that alone will have some franchisors a little concerned, unless it's a franchisor that is in more early stage and allows for a lot more flexibility. But most of our franchisors are looking for someone that can embrace and comply with systems. So this too entrepreneurial side of her is going to limit the kind of concepts that we might be able to show her, even though her son wouldn't have those same limits. We're now starting to get the picture. This is not about her son. It's about about her.
Yes, so I showed her achievers concepts, really. So this is where I failed. I showed her Anago, EnviroMasters, ASP, Seva, Fantastic Sense, and La Vida Massage. And she and her husband, I think it was probably more the husband, who was interested in Seva. After the first meeting with the franchisor, they just said, oh, we're not interested anymore. We'll do it on our own.
So there's that entrepreneur coming out. Yeah, we'll do it on our own. We'll either go search on ourselves or we'll go create something. So you listen to her words, which was, we want to do something for our son. You took time to understand the son. You picked concepts that made sense for the son. But ultimately, they were going to do it on their own, because it really wasn't the son that was buying. It was the mother kind of living through their sons. And by the way, there are cultures where parents do kind of live through their children. And so we have to take those cultural things into concern too. Plus, you were being cognizant about the E2 process, that you needed to show certain concepts where that could be an easier process to go through. So,
Yes.
so if you had to do it all over again, girl, what would you do different?
I would do two things. One, I would definitely ask to have the son involved in the process. And if she doesn't want to have the son involved at that stage, I would definitely work based on what she needs and not what she's telling me.
Excellent. So we might have been able to sell her something if we had focused just on her, or if she really was insisting that the son was it, then we need to get him involved, have him take an assessment, and let her see we are choosing this business for him. For him, you're going to have to keep trust me, you're going to have to keep bringing him back to that. This is for your son, and for him to be successful, this is what it's going to require. It's going to require this culture, these stages of growth, these values, and these core competencies. And this is why I'm choosing these handful of companies for your son to take a look at. In this case, that didn't happen. So are there some concepts, if you were just going to show her, if you had an emulator director like her, which by the way make good franchisees in the right franchise system, what concepts would you show today?
Well, I would show her Jacques Summary, which is a very high-scale French hair care company, and they own Fantastic Sam's. The reason why I would choose them is because it's very high scale. So the image is really beautiful. They have really beautiful stores. I would have probably shown her Marilyn Monroe spas, or Le Macaron, which is a French pastry concept. So I would have shown her things like that.
So all are sexy, all are prestigious, all are image conscious, which are emulator likes. So, and all are perceived as high end and a certain clientele that she would prefer to work with. So you would show her something completely different than what you would have shown her son. And you, so I love these: the Marilyn Monroe spa, the French hair care concept, and then the pastry concept. I think all would have been ones she would have got really excited about. So let's open, Aubrey, open this up. Was there any questions that you folks had? I'm not able to see the text chat, so I'm going to have to go to you, Aubrey, to take over.
I'm going to jump in here. So there were a lot of questions, actually. So I'm going to start at the top. And then for any questions that we can't get to, I will follow up with emails to you guys individually. So I want to address a first question that Kim asked, and she said that recently, and this must have come up, but she's had a lot of achievers that are thinkers on their profiles, and strangely enough, so have we. So she asked, isn't that contradictory? So Rebecca, if you want to.
So yeah, it's so interesting. An achiever could be an achiever promoter, achiever thinker, achiever connector, achiever director. And the reason for that is we're measuring two different things. With the values, or the achiever, emulator, societal, we're measuring their values, how they spend their money, time, and energy, and what ultimately will attract them. Remember, values is part of their attraction strategy, and this is a lot of what Cris was pointing out to us. If she had focused on the emulator, she knew she had to go after sexy and image conscious types of, or trendy kinds of concepts. So the achiever is a values marker, and the thinker is actually a work style marker in terms of how they process information and how they communicate. So in this case, if I was working with a thinker, I would give them more data, dot the I's, cross the T's, and knowing that they're going to have a gazillion questions. Where the director, you know, they have 2 or 3 pieces and boom, they're gone. So no, it's not uncommon to have a achiever also be a thinker. And to Aubrey's point, we're noticing a trend here because we've been doing this 22 years. We're noticing a trend in both our franchise candidates and in our brokers that we are getting more and more achiever thinkers. And where early on, in early days of franchise brokering, we had a lot of emulator achievers or emulator societals that came into the business. So the brokerage business itself has gotten so excellent in terms of you guys acting as true, unbiased advisors, and you're highly respected in the marketplace by these prospective franchisees, that this thinker side is beginning to be attracted to the business in and of itself, the one that's willing to do what Cris just did, to put someone through that E2 process, to help with finance and do all those deals. So we are seeing a trend where we're getting higher thinker markers, smarter, more diligent types of buyers as well as brokers. Aubrey, I'm sorry, go ahead with your second question.
Okay, so, and then Keith brought up a good point. He said one of on the first profile, it said it's submissive and indecisive traits bad for retail franchise. And the thing that I brought up was that if it's a stage 2 or 3 organization, there's support in there in that kind of process is developed. So is that right? Was that a good answer? Because they don't really need to be the best decision makers because the franchisors are going to help them with that. So it's like the complementary competencies moment.
Yeah, it's definitely a complementary competency moment. And the good news about strong stage 2 companies is they have gone out and gotten those best practices either from their early stage franchisees, or they've reached out to other franchisors. And you're absolutely right. What we want is those complementary core competencies. And by stage 2 and stage 3, the franchisor is pretty clear. This is what we're bringing. This is what we need in terms of core competency. So the franchisee, in many ways, doesn't require certain things. I got to tell you a crazy one. In certain stages of growth, leadership skill in a franchisee is actually a detriment, not a positive, because there ends up being a ram-to-ram power struggle between the franchisee and the franchisor. So we're actually pleased when they have weak areas and we can find a franchisor that complements it, because it creates an interdependency. That's what we want.
Exactly. And Cris, if you can jump in on this one, Adrian asked, what were the franchises that you showed originally to the first prospect?
All right, so go back. I showed him Flip Flop Shop, Seba, and Spice and Exchange.
Okay, perfect. And then let's see here. Mike asked a quick question about the profiles in general, but he asked if there are profiles that show that somebody should not go into business. So we do have a ranging scale on the profiles. It starts at corporate, goes to contractor, moves on to entrepreneur, and then single, multi, and regional developer. So we have a sliding scale to address maybe when someone should stay in a corporate environment instead of moving into business ownership. And Rebecca, if you want to jump in on that at all.
Yeah, I just brought up a slide so you could see where it's located on the profile, that this is indeed, as Aubrey suggested, a continuum. And if you recall, Nyla scored in the entrepreneur. So we'd be a little bit hesitant, or at least very cautious what system we put her in that allows her to be very entrepreneurial. But some will score in corporate, that they are going to be more successful climbing that corporate ladder. They have flexibility, they're agile, they're quick learners, they can go from department to department and climb that corporate ladder. They like the structure of that and be very successful at that. Others are more consultant or contractor types that are not quite entrepreneurs or even able to do single unit, but they have like a subject matter expertise and they need 3 or 4 companies or clients that they can serve. Now, there are some franchise concepts. We actually have them as clients of ours that can work with a consultant contractor type that acts more as a technician or a deliverable, but the franchisor provides the lead and sets the schedule and sends that person out to solve that problem. Let's say it's a technical problem or computer problem. So yes, the report will tell you if there's someone should basically stay. And there's some other markers, and please call us and we'll help you cover those markers, but this is the most kind of blatant one that'll stick out.
Okay, and there was a question to Cris that you might want to jump in on. It says about asking about the criteria to be reached for the E2 visa. So what do they need to do for that?
The candidates? Well,
yeah,
they have.
There's a quick answer.
Well, they have. First of all, for the E2 visa, they have to. Their passport has to be from some specific countries. For example, Russia, Brazil, China, and India do not qualify. So first one, they have to have a passport from those countries. Then they have to have enough money, cash, for the total investment, as well as to cover their living expenses for, let's say, the first year. So they have to have between at least $150,000 to $200,000 cash. Then they have to work in the business. So passive ownership does not qualify. And it has to be a real business. So franchises work really well for that.
And then Greg brought up a good point really quick. I'm just going to jump in on this for the last minute, but and I think this has to do with the first guy's profile where we were talking about the kind of indecisiveness that came up, or his competencies where they were a little bit lower. But he brings up that 9 rounds isn't business to business. So how is that so managed? How did you get him to be comfortable with that?
Well, because they're very strong with marketing and the marketing tools. So.
Right, so we were able to leverage the competencies big time in that
perspective, and then he brings a solution to the clients. The clients of 9 round have a problem. They need a workout. They don't have much time, and he provides a solution to that.
Awesome. So there's a few more questions, but I don't think there's any way we'll be able to fully address them. So I can follow up emails with you guys from the collaborative efforts from Rebecca and Cris with their answers. Actually, Liz's question could probably be answered quickly. She says, how much of the profile should we kind of share with the client? So obviously they get their prospect report, Rebecca, but are there key areas that you think should be honed in on?
We may want to have Cris answer that, but I am pro showing every aspect to the candidate. It builds their confidence in themselves, and it builds the credibility with you that you really sincerely care. So, the highlights, if I was to highlight anything, is show them the values, show them the culture, focus on the stages of growth, and then also look at the needs and wants and the core competencies. Some of the other pieces are not as important, but Cris, how do you do it? How do you go over the assessment with them?
Well, the assessment is the first piece I ask them to do, and if they don't do that, I don't work with them. And simple, because it means that if they cannot spend 10 minutes to do a test online, which is quick and fun, then it means they're not motivated enough. And to be honest, I never had the case with the E2 clients that they would not do it. Actually, they jump on it right away because they want to move forward. So as soon as it is done, I usually send them an email saying, thank you very much, I received your profile, blah, blah, blah. I give them a couple of things in the email saying, this is what I see, just to give them a feedback, to say, I acknowledge, I received it, I looked at it. And then, when can we talk? And then when we talk, I go through, I comment it, and I use it see what they tell me. And I say, oh, the profile is telling me this. Does it resemble you? What do you think about this? And then they're going to talk, and I write what they're telling me. So I use it for engagement, for discussion, and getting to know them better.
Perfect.
Beautiful.
I think that's a great, yeah. You need them to kind of fill in the blanks on some of those things. So you guys, in the interest of time, we're at an hour. There is a follow-up survey that's going to pop up if you guys wanted to talk to Cris more about E2 leads, if you want to try a free trial of the SpotOn profiles, or if you want to be involved in our research. It's simple yes or no's, and we will, follow up with you according to your responses. And then again, the remaining questions that we have, I will get answers to you guys on. Unless there's any last-minute questions, or Cris or Rebecca, you guys want to add anything?
No, thank you, Cris, for taking time. We really, really appreciate your insight.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
And again, this was recorded so we can get you guys copies of that as well. But thank you so much, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your week.